Your new global talk show, Newstellers. Let's meet our panelists. So Atta, you wrote a pretty interesting article about mukbang recently.
It was about that phenomenon that's happening in Korea. There are some people that they eat in front of the camera and they live stream it. So their fans watch it and they pay money for watching it, and they gave kind of presents to these guys called broadcast jockeys or BJs. And there's a pretty big business here in Korea. They have thousands of fans. And it was right. I thought it would be interesting for the Spanish.
Were the rest of you aware of this term?
Oh yeah,
Mukbang?
I wrote some articles too. I don't know if they're interesting, but for this article I watch a lot of mukbang. I spent one evening watching mukbangs on
Really?
Africa TV. This is a kind of experience where you realize that cultural differences are still big even after many years, where you really don't understand what's going on.
I've never watched mukbang because it would take away from the time I used to watch paint dry, which I find perhaps more interesting.
I was talking to an expert, and he told me that actual reason for there are different reasons, but the actual reason for most of the people is a little bit sad, is that people is very lonely. So people want to eat with someone, as eating with someone is a kind of a social thing that everybody needs. So they find in those broadcasting jockeys, they are like eating partners.
I think mukbang is a part of a wider phenomenon right now of slow television. You've seen in Scandinavia a very popular show that has happened over the winter of just watching a fire being tended for, days it would go on. Recently in England, there was a really popular television show that just featured a barge or some sort of ship just slowly traveling down a river. And I think it's a reaction to kind of the intense interactions we have. I mean, all the intense television, just, our lives that are so plugged into social media and other these kind of high all this intense stimuli that we face. And I think watching people eat or watching a ship go down a river, it's kind of zen.
I disagree with you. I agree with Atta. I think the main reason is because people feel lonely. Actually, I interviewed this mukbang star, the diva, this attractive woman who has so many followers, and she's making a lot of money. And she told me that most of her fans enjoy eating with her because they don't want to eat alone. And in Korea, there is this saying that a meal you having alone has no taste, it's not good. And that she told me, most of my followers think I'm their friend. So this is a way of sharing the meal with, because she answers, people ask her questions. It's not only eating, people ask her questions, she answers, she makes jokes, so there is an interaction with the viewers. And in that sense, that makes more sense.
Okay, so we've had a little taste of how mukbang is viewed by the foreign media, and we'll be talking more about what food means to a modern society today. Our topic is food, glorious food. So we've talked a little bit about how big eaters on screen, or broadcasting jockeys as they're sometimes called, are gaining popularity in Korea. What about the wider definition of mukbang though? Because it's not just live streaming. You include cooking shows, you've got travel shows that are centered around food, it seems, a lot these days. You've got the obligatory heroine stuffing her face in a Korean drama scene. What do you think of that wider culture?
Well, I think food, and especially in Korea, when you watch TV in Korea, you see a lot of shows about food. You see restaurants preparing food, people preparing food in their houses. So I think food is really trendy, especially in Korea. And people really like to watch things related to food.
A theory that I've had is, with the rise of the internet and over the past several years, things that used to be sort of cultural touchstones like music and literature have kind of faded in their relevance. People are not as interested in them anymore. So when people get together, they're not as likely to talk about food or literature or whatever else, and they're not as likely to use those things as touchstones for shared experiences. I think now there's just been this huge rise, particularly in North America, in Toronto, where I'm from, of always finding the new restaurants and always getting together to cook and to make cocktails and to make desserts. And I think maybe this mukbang thing is one part of just how how much bigger of a position food has in cultures around the world, in Korea and elsewhere.
It's interesting.
But in France, for example, we see, compared to for the last 3-4 years, we see more and more TV shows about food, and that's new. TV shows about cooking, about like bakery competitions, and this is a phenomenon that did not exist before. It's a pretty recent phenomenon, and it's changing the way people cook. For example, my little brother, who watch all these shows, is becoming a very, very good cook. So I can see this trend not only in Korea or in North America, but in Europe too.
I think this is more of the result of some other kind of social problems that could be happening in Korean society or other societies too, where we have become so familiar with only using smartphones to communicate with people, messenger programs, that that basic human interaction has taken a back seat, and that perhaps because of that, people find some kind of stimulation in watching others eat.
And also I think the one really big factor is that the globalization, because with this global world, we can have foods from every country. I remember when I was a child, it was not that easy to find a foreign restaurant and eat foreign food like from a country that is like 10,000 kilometers away. But these days, you go to the downtown of every city and you can try food from different countries. So people get really interested about food, about ingredients, about new recipes, about fusion. So that the media always reflects what the society wants and what the society is interested in. So that's why I think food also is growing in the media.
Do you enjoy watching other TV shows?
I mean, the TV shows about cooking, I really understand the appeal. It's fun. They add, I mean, when you cook, it's usually there is no competition, but they add the element of tension. You have competition between different cooks, between different bakeries, and they put some like music. I mean, they make the whole show appealing in a way, and I understand why.
I used to really like the show Iron Chef, which was on the Food Network, and it was like some of the best chefs from around the world, and they would compete based on every show. There would be the one ingredient. Say it could be like bacon, it could be fennel, or it could be apples. And they had to make a range of dishes that all prominently feature this one ingredient.
Right.
I mean, the OG celebrity chef, Julia Child, really set the stage for all celebrity chefs following her. She hosted a show from 1963 until 73 called The French Chef. And this is when French cuisine was still considered difficult and exotic, that she showed how easy it was. And she really set the stage for the other celebrity chefs that came after her, like Gordon Ramsay of Hell's Kitchen, Paula Deen, who had her own television show, Stefan Feta, who had a popular CBC cooking show. Julia Child really, she is the benchmark, I think, that got the world hooked on watching people cook and eat.
Was it as popular as now? Because now in France, these TV shows are really making the biggest audience.
Julia Child, throughout the 60s, from what I understand, from what I'm told, I wasn't there, she was a popular cultural icon of the time.
Okay.
So one thing I love about cooking shows is these really beautiful dishes that they come up with. I don't know about you, but my dishes always turn out really ugly, something only the creator could love and eat. But we are, of course, seeing more food bloggers, more and more food posts on Instagram. I kind of get sick of it, really. So it seems that good food these days doesn't necessarily mean tasty. It also has to be visually appealing. Would you agree with that?
I find it interesting. I know that in the US, for example, now there are restaurants where they adjust the light and the dishes they are special dishes so it looks better on the picture. They even change the settings of the restaurant so when you take picture it looks good. This is what you call food porn, right? When you take this picture of the food. And it's becoming popular in France too. And I read this very funny article written by a psychologist in Atlantico, where she was saying that it's becoming popular in France because it's a way to share the meal with people who are not here. And there was some kind of a sexual aspect of it. It was a little bit like what do you call it, foreplay? When you delay the pleasure. Before starting the food, you take picture, you look at it, you share with other people.
Frankly, Fred, I'm a little sick of all these foodies and food bloggers. I mean, I think this is just it's a snob appeal. I mean, it's like, look at this fancy meal I had, look at this great, looking salad I ate, and I think it's, they are trying to show off their their affluence or their sophistication by letting everyone else know, like, hey, look at the food that I'm able to consume.
I don't think this is
perhaps
intentional.
I take it that way. And these are also the same people that tell you what you should be eating and what you should like. They're letting their own personal they want to dictate what others eat based on their own personal preferences and this kind of illusory sort of status that they think they're achieving by eating, exotic or nice-looking foods.
Food and eating have always been all about all five senses. Chefs and anybody who cooks have for a long time tried to make food visually appealing. So that's not entirely new. But I think the instinct, like food as a kind of public status symbol that Jason alluded to, that's new, and I think it's kind of
Come
weird.
on, I don't take pictures of my food, but I wouldn't be so negative. I don't think you want to show your social status by taking food. You're just happy to have this good meal, and you want to share your happiness with other people. I think it's pretty innocuous.
And also, in this world with the social networks, we all show up a little bit sometimes, So it's everything about show up in some way, right? And there are people that they show up more or less, but some people just want to show up, as Fred says, how happy they are, for example. Not only social or money status. And food is one really great thing for saying, like, I'm having a great Saturday lunch with a good friend in a really happy mood with this awesome food.
Yeah, and the only times that I've been tempted to post what I was eating was when I found a restaurant that was really, really good. And I felt like, okay, the people at this restaurant are doing a really good job.
Yeah.
I want, the people I know to be able to experience this great food. So like here, this is what this restaurant is. I recommend you all come here.
But once again, a meal is about sharing. You share your meal with others, and just using social media is just a way to share your meal with more people than before. It's just a modern way of sharing your meal.
So the concept of food has been changed by social media itself as well. All right, so we've talked about the culture of enjoying good food visually, almost as much as enjoying the taste of the food itself. So let's move on to how people are approaching meals in a modern society.
회사에서 급하게 일을 해야 되거나 할 때는 할 수 없이 혼자 먹는 경우도 많이 있고요. 처음에는 되게 어색하고 되게 외롭고 외톨이인 것 같은 느낌이 들어서 좀 꺼렸는데 이것도 익숙해지다 보니까 먹을만 하더라고요.
이제 서로 유대감을 쌓아가는 그런 과정이라고 생각을 하는데 요즘은 사실 시간이 다들 많이 쫓기다 보니까 그런 시간이 많이 없어지는 것 같아서 아쉬워요.
남들은 다 이렇게 둘이서 먹는데 외롭다는 기분이 들긴 했었는데 이게 저도 일정이 있고 그러다 보니까 빨리빨리 해결해야 되고 그러다 보니까 패스트푸드 같은 것도 찾게 되고 남들 이렇게 또 연락해서 같이 먹을 바에는 시간이 너무 아까우니까 그런 것 같습니다.
선택하고 싶은 거 이렇게 선택해서 갖고 와서 간단하게 여기 뜨뜻하게 해가지고 먹을 수 있으니까 아주 편리해요. 그게 현실이기 때문에 현실에 맞춰서 살아가야 되잖아요. 이게 자연스럽게 바뀌어지는 것 같아요.
일 때문에 출근할 때나 퇴근할 때 자주 이렇게 이용하는 편이고 눈치도 안 보이게 되고 혼자 식사하기도 편해지고 굉장히 좋아졌다고 생각하고 있어요.
Okay, so a common thread in the interview seems to be that they have very hectic lives, they don't have time to eat. What was your reaction to this?
I think this is one of the unfortunate side effects of our modern society where we're constantly required to be on the job, that because of smartphones and constant access to email or social media, even when we're off the clock during our lunch breaks, dinner time, at night, we get calls from bosses or perhaps in our case editors that want us to continue working. So often, and unfortunately, food gets sacrificed. And
I think in North America, there was a really interesting column in the New York Times a while ago about this. Being busy has become a kind of status symbol. Like to tell people like, well, I'm sorry, I'm so busy. I don't have time to eat. I don't have time to do this because I'm so busy. It's a way of communicating that there are a lot of demands on your time, that you're a sort of sought after person. So I think in Toronto, where I'm from, a lot of people beat that drum very heavily of like, well, I'm just so busy. I cannot meet you for lunch tomorrow. I'm too busy. I'm busy, busy, busy. And I think they all need to kind of give it a rest.
And some people is getting very unhealthy because of that, because you eat the first thing that you can, and you get used to it that every day, not as a special occasion. So people have a lot of health problems with that. So I think everybody should make time, at least for a decent lunch, and every company should make sure that their employees have a time for a decent lunch.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think some people, there is this culture of being busy, but it's true as well that even though I try to make time for lunch, so sometimes you just have, I had lunch by myself much more often and I wish.
Well, Korea is not the only place where people are leading very hectic lives and seeking simpler meals. A new type of meal, possibly the simplest in the world, is becoming popular in California. A new trend of meal replacement products is emerging in the busy Silicon Valley area as a way of saving valuable time to go out and eat. These include Soylent, Schmoylent, and Schmilk, made from superfood ingredients boasting all the nutrients you could need. You simply mix with water or milk, and that's your meal taken care of without ever having to leave your desk.
Gosh, that.
Those names.
That is bad.
The marketing manager needs to be sacked,
I
I
have
think.
to say that's pretty sad, but it looks healthy in some way because
Okay.
that food is healthy, has all the nutrients, and it's probably better than going out and eat a burger with French fries and ketchup.
Okay,
right?
okay, so why not have like dirt IV fluids directly down your arm?
I said it's socially bad, but
cannot
nutritionally okay for your health.
I think it's ironic that if you look back in human history, I mean, like we used to have so many more tasks. We used to have to like cut our wood and like kill our own animals. Like we had all these more things to do back then, but we still somehow had more time to, you know, share things like meals together. Like if you read Karl Marx's philosophy, like the idea was that like as automation and mechanization and technology improved, like we would have ways of accomplishing these tasks that would leave us with more leisure time. So I think we need to ask, like, why hasn't that happened? Like, why with so much more technology do we somehow have less time, or we at least have people who are complaining of having less time?
Well, actually, the pace of development has been increasing in all those centuries. So now our lives are like very fast, and the develop of the technology and the society is getting faster and faster. So I think we do much more things, we develop more in less time.
But it doesn't mean it's more and more meaningful. If you like
Right,
a lot of
it doesn't
people
mean it,
who
but it's
spend
like
like
that.
14 hours a day working, if you ask them what they really do, they're sometimes unable to come up with they don't.
Yeah,
do-
like those people that eat those horrible meal replacements. I'd love to see what they do at the end. Like at the end of the day, like, okay, I was at my desk for 14 hours. I didn't have time for lunch or dinner. This is what I produced. I'd love to see what it is. Like,
But unfortunately, I think this is the way the food industry is growing. As I think the developed world requires more and more, especially meat, we're going to see creations like this, you know, with synthetic meats, and you know, there's not enough land to raise all the cattle and pigs and chickens that are required to feed, you know, billions of people who want this type of food. So I mean, already scientists are experimenting with making, you know, fake, you know, chemically engineered beef and whatnot.
But in that case, I mean, these drinks you have instead of meal, I mean, this really takes out our humanity. We're really becoming robots who are fed. You just put some fuel and you can continue your day. And,
Like a
it's
car.
not a vision of humanity I like. And
Because I've actually tried meal replacement products
how is it?
in the name of dieting, but I gave it up pretty quickly because I think the promised weight loss was not worth the lack of taste and texture and smell, because as Stephen mentioned, food or cuisine is something that requires all 5 senses to be stimulated. But what kind of social problems do you think could arise from this new culture around eating?
Food has been a social issue in all the human history. The Greek people, they enjoyed food together, they played games together at lunch or dinner time, and they enjoyed food as a social event. So I guess if we get more disconnected of that, it would be bad for the society, for the people's happiness.
I think a great way to understand somebody is, you know, there's the English expression break bread with somebody, to sit down and have a meal with them. And so if we are, as a society, sharing fewer and fewer meals together, that you could make an argument that that will result in less compassion and less understanding.
yeah, actually, I never thought of it, but in France, the word friend is copain. Copain is somebody you share the meal. Pain is bread, so
Yeah.
somebody you share the bread with. That's the definition of a friend. And I think that's...
A company. There's all these words in European language that are derived from Latin, which means, you know, bringing bread together with people. So I mean, food has
interesting.
always played an important part in basic human interaction.
All right. So we've talked about some modern diet styles and how it's becoming harder and harder to just sit down and spend some good time with loved ones. So change is inevitable, but there are certain values that we should keep, such as family time and bonding over food. But let's take a look at a new type of family who gather to share meals.
So there is a housing project of 2 families living under the same roof. called Colocation in France, and it is run by an organization named Ensemble Two Generation, which was presented on a TV show as well. And what is special about this project is that people can rent a room for free if they eat with the owners, who are usually elderly couples. So it allows them to bond like a real family, making dinner together and sharing a table.
So you're essentially going rent-free by giving your company to whoever's renting out to you, usually an elderly couple.
Do you have to bring wine at least?
I mean, it helps to bond. It helps to bond.
Yeah.
The idea is for the elderly couple to break their isolation. They feel less lonely, and they share the table. They usually have big apartments and empty rooms. They're happy to rent for free. I think it's great. I think it's a good idea of any kind of initiative to break the loneliness of people.
It's a good idea. I mean, it satisfies an economic need too. Rent is really expensive in big cities and anywhere in the world.
And generations don't talk so much with each other anymore. So I think sharing a meal is the best way for generation dialogue too.
A mutually beneficial agreement, I like it. Yes. All right, also in Arakawa-ku in Tokyo, there's a collective house named Kangang Mori, where people live together and become like a family. And this type of residence was created to get over the issues stemming from the increase of single families and an aging society in Japan. It's essentially a new way of living together and sharing food as a second family.
I think these kind of experiments of communal life, there have been popular in all over the world since the 60s, right?
But even in Korea, there is some initiative like that. There is this article published in Hankyoreh 21 that was picked up by the French newspaper about this application, smartphone application named Chipap. And the idea is for people who don't want to have dinner by themselves, they can gather, they can find partner for dinner and share dinner together.
So I don't think these trends in technology, as we've been talking about today, food shows, food porn, is a temporary phenomenon. I think it's a resulting aspect of today's very hectic society and individualism as well. So worth taking seriously, and let's hope society can continue to develop such initiatives to bring people back together. All right, well, let's wrap up with our final headlines as always. Is anyone brave enough to volunteer this week?
I will, and I will just simply say, take time to break bread.
Nice and simple, I like it.
I would say always make time for a healthy and tasty food, and if it's possible, with good wine, beer, and company.
That's a good headline, long headline.
That is.
Food porn. It's sexy, but not satisfying.
Very catchy indeed.
I would say drop your smartphone, call a friend, and have a good meal.
I am going to go have a fat meal now because all this talk of food has made me very hungry. So thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed yourselves.
That's lots of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good stuff. And we will see you next week for the next episode of a whole new global talk show, Newstellers. We will be open for any opinions or requests on our official website as well as our Facebook page.
All right, let's go ahead up to this place here.
수익보상 이윤동 감사합니다.
잘 먹겠습니다.